Hello friends, I invite you to a sunny seaside without leaving your home. Today we will paint a juicy summer landscape and dive into the secrets of mastery that artists have used for centuries. What will be in this lesson? We will break down the key laws of painting, talk about composition, color palette and aerial perspective. This is the foundation that will make your painting volumetric and harmonious. We will master the palette knife technique. I will show you how to create juicy textured strokes that give the work special energy. We will also learn to convey the feeling of a summer day. We'll figure out how to use color and light to depict the bright sun, transparent air, and light sea freshness. We will go through the entire journey step by step with you, from the first sketch to the final accents, including adding a human figure to bring the scenes to life. This will be a very detailed lesson where I share the most practical technique and secrets. Be sure to save it in your bookmarks. And now let's start creating. Part 1. Composition and sketch. I built my sketch on the principles of the golden ratio and the rules of thirds. All elements, houses, mountains, they go to a single vanishing point, which creates correct perspective. Remember, a successful composition is a very important part of success. It's the first thing the weaver risks to. You can screenshot my sketch and repeat after me, or paint your own scene using the same rules. It is important that all areas of your future painting differ in size, in shape, and in lightness. Part 2. First layer and color palette. Our task is to completely cover the white canvas, creating the main color spots with beautiful transitions in tone and hue. For the sea, I use transparent blue cobalt. It's a color shade of blue. I use plastic wrap to create an interesting texture in the foreground and a cloth to make a soft blue in the background. We will see some of these the final stages of the painting and some we will paint over. If something goes wrong at this stage, it won't be difficult to fix in the next stages, so don't worry. It is very important to fill the entire canvas so there are not little holes. For the sky, I take denser paint, add white, make it lighter near horizon. This creates a kind of dome effect. And now, very important theory, the color palette of a sunny day. Remember this formula: warm light, cool shadows. The thing is, the sun tints illuminated surfaces in pale yellow tones, while shadows, thanks to reflections from the blue sky, become lilac and bluish. It is this contrast that creates the feeling of summer. And another important tip: try to work with paint mixtures, not taking colors straight from the tube. This way your palette will be richer and more harmonious. Another very important point: you need to paint step by step in layers, and each layer needs to be dried rightly and completely. This is very convenient and it allows you not to be afraid of mistakes. Look, we are now painting the first layer, and when it dries, we will paint the second layer on top. And everything we need to correct something, change something, cover something up, we will do it very easily. We can completely erase some pieces if we need to, down to the first layer. And if we want to cover something with another color, we can also do it very successfully, and the paints will not mix. This is very convenient. This very moment allows you to paint more freely and first thinking about one specific task. If you want to make your paints qualitative, you need to solve several interesting tasks in them. Doing everything at once is possible and not necessary. If at each stage you solve one or two or three tasks, you can do several such stages and in the final get a very qualitative and very beautiful painting. Even if you are a beginner and this is your first painting, first attempt, just repeat after me step by step, listen to theory, and you will be very impressed with how you can paint beautiful and wonderful. While we are finishing the first layer with you, let's talk about aerial perspective. It's very simple. Aerial perspective makes painting three-dimensional. If you edit, your painting seems like you can enter them. This is clearly visible in semi-darkness. This is how you can check your paints for aerial perspective. Here is its essence. Remember, when you wake up early in the morning, go to the window and there is fog. And the trees and houses that are nearby you see as more contrasty and they are larger in size. And everything that is far away you don't see as clearly, more blurred, objects become smaller. This always happens. Fog is just the brightest example. And always in your paintings, make that is in front of you more contrasty and that is far away softer. Here, this is the mountains and the horizon line. Let's dry everything. After the first layer is completely dry, we move on to the most delicious, working with a palette knife. The main rule here, the first stroke is the most beautiful. Try not to correct it and not complicate the painting. Right now, with white and light yellow, I am marking the light parts of the houses. It's very convenient to use a palette knife here to add texture. I take various warm shades for the light areas. This will help create a bright, beautiful color palette. It is very successful to paint with a palette knife already on a prepared, dried first layer. When you paint with a palette knife on a white canvas, the white shows through in a little spots and you need to think about how to cover it. But when you have prepared the first layer and covered the entire white canvas, then you can think not about covering the canvas, but about creating interesting textures, how to change the direction of strokes, how to create some artistic gestures. This is very easy and very comfortable. At this stage, you can sometimes take brushes and use them like a palette knife. That is, lower them thickly with paint and create interesting textures. Right now, you need to think about making the textures beautiful, making the colors tasty. Your shades should be diverse. You take one big color spot and inside it you make this color unified but with different shades. I will also paint the shadow part of the parapet with a warmer color, but so that the blue color also shows through somewhere. This part should generally be a bit darker because it's a different angle. we see in real life and create in our paintings volumes, angles, practically by the difference in that is lighter and that is darker. This difference on the canvas is painted by sunlight or its absence. Now we take various light blue shades. At this stage, you can use a palette knife or something else to correct the drawing, paint the roofs. For the roofs to look neater, choose some point on the horizontal line and then you outline them. Let the roof lines direct towards this point, creating linear perspective. Since this is the foreground, it is appropriate to add many little threads here to create something interesting and contrasting. The shadows from the parapet will be bluish and they will also be the shadow from the future vegetation. Paint very freely. If suddenly something goes wrong, all this paint can be removed down to the previous layer, which is already dry. And you can correct the drawing very precisely using a palette knife or brushes. You can fix everything. And don't worry about anything. Add little windows, some small details. It will definitely work out for you. My windows will also be blue because I'm trying to maintain a blue-yellow color scheme. Since this is not the final yet, but already the middle of the painting, try to paint neatly. Now think about to make beautiful transition and some very beautiful textures, interesting colors. Think about this and get pleasure from that you are doing. This is very visible in the final results of your painting. I suggest adding greens and various vegetation of the painting. Painting green plants is very simple. It doesn't matter palette knife or brush. It is important for you to always use 2-3 shades for green, a darker one for deep and a lighter one for the little leaves. It's very important that the greenery doesn't blend with the surrounding world, so that it doesn't coincide in lightness with the houses and adjacent spots. We are built in such a way that we very really see the difference in color immediately, but we very accurately see the difference in tone, in lightness. For us to see these leaves, it doesn't matter that color we are, green, blue, any color. That's important. It is they differ in lightness from the adjacent spots. Then we'll recognize them from a distance in small paintings and in photos. It's the same story with flowers. First, we take a darker color. For me, it's pink, a dark carmine or madder-like. And then I immediately mix this color with white to create the light areas. I try to do everything in one motion. I'll cover some of the flowers with greenery. I'm also adding greenery to the parapet. For this, I use a brush and to make random leaves, I'll flip the brush over. In some places, I leave gaps so I don't have a perfectly straight line, so the dots are random like in nature. There's great rule about rhythms. For example, the rhythm of grass should be similar but not identical. That is, the blades of grass stick out in different directions. Some dots break out on a perfectly even edge line. To make the leaves more interesting, in this part closer to us, I add a palette knife. We'll paint the flowers in the pot. We outline the pot. The paint is still wet and will mix. It's okay, it will all turn into reflections. With a brush and palette knife, you can correct the silhouettes and add details. To create a nice silhouette, not just for this pot, but in general, it's very convenient to use the method of reverse painting or using the background. This is when you paint not from inside the object, but outline it with the background. This way, you can always correct the silhouettes for all objects. I will paint the plant and its branches with a brush. I load the brush with a lot of paint. We ensure this plant is multi-layered, meaning some parts of the recede into the deep and some are closest to us, so that the silhouette of this plant isn't square or perfectly round, but a bit uneven like in nature. The plants in this pot are closer to us, so they will be larger. The plants in this pot are closest to us, so they will be larger. And to create more contrast, I use purple for the shadows and very bright pink colors for the flowers. I apply the paint thickly with the palette knife directly onto the other paint. It will create a very nice effect. These flowers, which are even closer to us, will make even more contrasty using a very bright color. Don't be afraid to use pure white and pure black. Sometimes they say you shouldn't do this, but that's not true. You should use all the contrast possibilities your paints offer. But there shouldn't be much white or black in your painting. Then you preserve its multi-layer depth. The rocks that are closer to us we make a bit more contrasty, and we will also add a bit of reflection and sheer form. Any of your objects must have either a reflection or a shadow. Then they look very nature and belong to this painting. If you don't create a shadow or reflection, the object seems glued on as if it's from another painting. With a flat brush and white paint, I paint the sailboats. A small boat is simply a small triangle for the sail, a small triangle for the hull, and a reflection as always. To make it easier to draw the boats, you use your pinky finger as a support. It's a great method when you want to draw with a brush as confidently as with a pencil. I will add different shades to the boards to make them more interesting. And if I need to correct something, I can do it with a thin liner brush. I will take the palette knife to add texture. If you want it, you can practice on a piece of paper first. And let's paint a few more of these little boats. Now we leave the painting to dry. The final layer, let's go! Well, finally the final touches. We assemble the painting. We'll add large leaves in the foreground and bright yellow flowers. With a flat brush and green color, I outline the large leaves in the foreground. I always use several shades of green and very boldly fill the corner with leaves. I create a detailed silhouette and light areas. Let's add a human figure. It serves two purposes. First, it establishes scale, helping the viewer gauge the space. Second, it attracts the eye, becoming the emotional center. Paint it in a suggestive way, conveying the mood. Anatomical accuracy isn't needed. And don't forget the shadow. Without it, any object looks foreign. How to do it? With a white brush, I outline the size on the figure. The size of people needs to be proportionate to the building's neighbor. In my case, the girl ends up closer than the distant houses, but a bit for the column and wall of the nearest house. After I've outlined the base of the figure and her dress, I fill it in completely so the buildings don't show through. I use blue and azure shades. I paint the figure's legs with a very thin brush, using flesh tones. Flesh tones are ochres, siennas, or mixtures based on them. According to my idea, the girl is walking, so one leg will be a bit closer, the other a bit far away. In small paintings made with a palette knife, you don't necessarily need to paint ideal human figures. You need to convey the imagery, the mood of the painting. And the person in the painting isn't the main subject, but rather an accent. I also outline the arms very loosely. If you're worried about proportions, you can print out a human figure of the required size. Rub the back of paper with light pastel, transfer the silhouette, and then paint it. This is absolutely not a problem because we artists use everything we need for a good result. When I have the girl's silhouette, I add shadows. They will be purple-blue. I refine the silhouette a bit and create various transitions. I'll draw a head. I'll correct some moments using the reverse spot method. I also add shoes. They will become an interesting accent. Why add people? There are several good reasons. Paintings with people seem more professional because people think drawing humans is very difficult, and for conveying scale. When we see familiar proportions, like a person, we can understand how large the surrounding space is. For example, a mountain landscape without people is less impressive than one there a teeny human silhouette is visible. Be sure to add a shadow from the girl. It's very convenient to use a palette knife to paint the folds on the girl's dress and accents on the head. With a brush or palette knife, we can add small thin accent strokes and correct silhouettes. One more reason that we add people is to attract attention. We are wired to naturally pay attention to human figures wherever they are. Another interesting point about composition. In this painting, I used a technique called the viewer's path. This is then you have a plan where your viewer will look first, that they'll notice next, and that they meet only notice after hundreds of viewings. How it all works. The girl's silhouette attracts attention because it's a person, and moreover, she's placed on a third line. The leaves and large flowers in the foreground, together with the large wall, create a kind of frame. This is also a wonderful compositional technique, creating frames that invite you to look into the deep. The lines of the path lead us deep into the painting. Our gaze follows the girl's movement, pauses on the lines of the stones, focuses on the sailboats, and goes beyond the horizon line and the mountains. The sailboats are also located on the third lines and the golden radio points, just like the large flowers. The viewer's path is also enhanced by the aerial perspective in the painting. At the final stage, check the painting. Add necessary leaves, twigs. See if the silhouettes of objects from lines that are too even. They need to be broken up. This painting has many palette knife strokes, each of which can be viewed endlessly. If a person looks at this painting for a long time, they will eventually notice the water's texture. The painting will sound a little different each time. The painting is ready. Look at how the warm and cold colors combine. Thank you for being with me. Create with pleasure and don't be afraid to experiment. If you want to delve deeper into the topic of composition, color mixing, or anything else, write in the comments. The topic of the next video will depend on you.